welcome back, Neil. It's been a little while since you and I have connected again, but great to be with you, yeah?
And you too, yeah.
The final third part of, this series that we're doing as well. And if people haven't caught up on the first two, then they'll certainly find that, on our profiles, and we can make it easy for them if they just DM us. I'm happy to send, the links from that as well. So we're changing tack this week, or on this video, really around roles, yeah, and we're going to be looking at 3 key questions, and we're going to keep this nice and tight and under half an hour if we can. Okay, that's our plan. All right, so we're probably 25 minutes now. I know it's like I go down into a vortex with you as well too, but we're gonna make this work. So 3 questions, yeah, that we're going to look at. One is automation replacing or improving roles? So you're going to kick off with that. That's your space. Yeah. And based on that, I'm going to really be answering around, well, what does that mean then in terms of role design for those that are, particularly at management level? And there's a lot of talk, isn't there, as well around senior managers and what does that look like, and, what are we expecting is going to happen around that? And then we're going to finish up with, well, depending on, again, where you go with that first part, oversight roles. Yeah. What does that look like? And will that actually create more work for the people that are in management as well too? So really looking, I suppose, at how the oversight roles and management roles, depending on what who's left behind in the mix, or how they evolve, what is that actually going to look like into the future? So we've got 3 key roles or questions that we're going to look at relating to roles. Do you want to just kick off, give us a 1-sentence overview? I know you've done a lot in your career, so that's not really kind, but can you tell us really, why you do, why you do it?
Okay, so I advise leaders on human-led AI adoption and provide change leadership learning solutions. So that's basically what I do. I'll tell you why I do it.
Why do you do it?
My motivator really is years of seeing how people are affected by poorly led change, the impact on people in the workplace. And what motivates me is to reduce that anxiety and fear that people have around change. And of course, we're seeing that in spades with AI. So this feels like a particularly critical driver for me.
Yeah, good. Great. Thank you. And I'm Ali Uren. And my reason for being is to make sure that leaders and teams have the ability and the environments to be able to de-risk the risk of brain drain in a modern world, both in AI and non-AI environments, but most of them are obviously now going to be AI generated, and making sure they can leverage that unique IP back into the business to drive not just people growth, but commercial performance too, and really create a differentiated brand through that. So we're coming from different places, but connected as well. So let's get into it, Neil, shall we?
Yeah.
So tell me what you're saying out there at the moment. Is automation, a lot of myths around there at the moment, but is it replacing or improving roles? What are you saying? Tell us what you want to share around that.
So this is a key question for me. Let's start with a bit of context, maybe. For 200 years, since the Industrial Revolution, we have been driven, haven't we, for greater productivity and greater efficiencies, and we've grown organisations to really drive out those efficiencies and productivity. And of course, I understand that is a sensible thing to do for any business.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in that 200 years, we've also recognised the needs of people in this, the need to motivate people to achieve those efficiencies and productivity. But what I think we are seeing with AI, particularly in the early stages for organisations, is this idea, in effect, that AI equals automation. So if AI equals automation, we can achieve efficiencies through headcount reductions, fewer people in the organization, and, we'll be equally as productive or more productive with fewer people, and everyone's happy. And we see this quite a bit. We will focus on tools to achieve automation of particular tasks or functions, and assume those tasks and functions equal whole people's jobs, roles.
Yeah,
so we see redundancies.
Yeah.
And we've seen that right across swathes of layers within the organization, whether middle management or whether, new recruits. The thing for me about this is we can achieve efficiency and productivity when we focus on people. And so not detaching those things in a way that they're not binary. So if we can motivate people to learn, and they want to learn and follow their own learning path,
yes,
actually they're going to be more productive with the tools that they choose. They will remove work that they dislike, so they will be happier in work.
Yes.
They will want to do those jobs because they're happier in what they're doing, so that you will get the productivity and efficiency because people are in a better place. And you'll also, by removing some of the fear that AI creates, you're going to create an environment where people feel they can innovate and explore. And so you get new ideas, new competitive advantage ideas coming up, new opportunities through that, creating that environment for people to feel safe to experiment. So my bottom line really is, I think you can achieve the efficiency and the productivity gains through a focus on people, and make it, empowering them to find where they can make those efficiencies.
So I really like how you flip the script on that, Neil, right? Because obviously it's got a lot of fear around it, a lot of ambiguity, and it's seen as a negative, right? Where you're taking this into a different space and saying it's actually both, and we can actually use it in a way where the business can win, but the people can win through having greater autonomy and decision making over shaping that as well too. Yeah.
Exactly. I think key to that is allowing people the autonomy. This is one of the greatest things I think we can do to explore, what tools they want to use, what problems they have, and create the efficiency through this sort of democratized approach to AI adoption that empowers them to find how they can save their 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day, whatever it is. The organization benefits from that. Of course they do, because everyone's saving time. But what we say, and the Boston Consultant Group survey of June, AI in the workplace, you shared a post on that a while ago. That really opened my eyes, and in particular around people just not using the tools they're being given, because those tools aren't solving their real problems. They're easy solutions. Let's just roll this tool out. People will use it, and of course people are motivated to use it when it solves their real problems.
100%. So if we can start those conversations earlier, so that will lead me into the second question. Is there anything else you want to add to that before we move forward?
No, I don't think so. My bottom line really is, if we focus on people and we can find ways in which people can feel motivated with AI adoption, we will achieve the productivity and efficiencies. But on top of that, finding new ways of working and new competitive advantage for the organization.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that differentiation is really critical, which is something that I'm have always spoken a lot about, focusing on in my own work. We come from different places, but the outcome and the impact is still the same, right? So let's go through that then. Let's just come back to some of the key points that you talked about. And then let's talk about, well, then if we are going to have middle managers, right? Because there's, like we said, a lot of hype around and all be taken out, and basically AI is going to fulfill the role of middle management and whatever. So let's say that we're going to have, we need a level, don't we, right? Between teams, leadership, C-suites, right? Otherwise, I just don't see how that would particularly work, right? A leader's going to be taken on anymore, like who picks up that slack, right? So let's say there's still a level within the organisation that is that conduit between major key decision makers and what's happening on the front line as well too. Let's talk a bit about what those roles can look like, right? So if we just start to focus on maybe some of the skill sets that we're seeing that we think people are going to need. Are you happy for me to kick this off, and then I'll well. And I think it's an emerging skill set, and I think that we're really seeing an evolution of what we need. And so I've written some things down that I think are going to be really, really critical to this. Some of them we already know, right? They're quite common. You'll always see them in like World Economic Forum reports, coaching, mentorship, relationship building, critical thinking. But there's more to it than that, right? And I think when we put in the complexity that can be AI, I think it changes the game around what those skills will be. And so I'd like to add a few of these and throw to you as we go there. So I actually think having an oversight around real robust business acumen is going to be critical. I think understanding strategy, and understanding how to interpret that and put it in a way that makes sense, that people want to engage with, that's got real relevance and meaning to them at that role level is going to be critical. I think definitely being able to repurpose lessons learned from the experimentation that you spoke about. I think that's going to be critical. Otherwise, it just sort of hangs out there, Neil. It doesn't land anywhere. I think to have the ability, the resource and environment to do that's critical. Certainly being able to respond differently and creatively to the gaps and the threats and the risk that we see, right? Because as you learn more, you see more too, And so I think that, I see, just in closing, and I'll throw it over to you, I see a real role of not just coaching and mentoring, which everyone talks about, but a facilitation mindset and skill set, that takes, and I always say to people that I facilitate, go and get your certs in training and assessment, or I like to call it learning and development, but the quality is called training and assessment here in Australia. Other countries would have their own equivalents, but do some, that is a qual that you need to have. That facilitation of what is coming through in terms of IP, lessons learned, wisdom, organisational memory. How do we actually take that and then feed it back into the business in a way, like you said, that is great for people's development, but also drives that commercial performance and gives the brand a real differentiator in a diversified and competitive market too, right? So I think that the skill set we see is becoming increasingly sophisticated. And you might say traditionally, hey, they're leadership, like C-suite skill sets, but no, I would argue, knowing what we know and what we're seeing out there in the field at the moment, that they are actually, skill sets that will need to be, if people don't have them, and they probably won't, that the organisations have a plan in place to actually curate those within their managers. So I'm throwing it over to you, Neil. I'd be really interested to see what you might add and where you sit with that is.
I think a recognition that we are relearning what work is with AI, and so not assuming we have the answers, and that for me really drives the need for continuous learning. If we're not approaching work as a continuous learning activity, we will not understand the power, if you like, of how we can work with AI. So for me, that kind of drives a few different things. It drives the need for leaders to lead from the front and demonstrate that they're learning too. Show some vulnerability in that learning, and you talk about sharing lessons learned. That needs to come from leadership as well, doesn't it?
Very much so. Very much so.
I think the what does management look like when we're managing a team that includes AI as part of that overall structure of that team? And how do it actually? What does that mean for leadership or team team leaders? And how we operate.
Sorry.
I think what is important is, of course, that whilst we are still learning how we work, AI is also learning as it develops. So through the training data that it's getting and the lessons that it's learning through its interaction and data, it changes. So we can't assume there's a static position that we can go away, do a course, come back, and we're good for the next 3 years. That's not going to work. And so how do we create environments as leaders of teams? How do they create environments that allow us that continuous learning approach in ways that we're doing this collaboratively, we're all learning, we're sharing that learning?
It's culturally a massive shift too, isn't it? Right. And how and into the workplace reality and how we see ourselves in that too, in our own identity as well. In terms of, and if we're going to make these changes, what are some of the key differences in how we show up, do you think? Like you've talked about vulnerability in that, but what else? What else would need to look different if we're going to make this really work?
I think we can't lose sight of when we approach these things, we're trying to do so in the context of a strategic direction for the organisation. but we need to be adaptable and flexible to what that looks like. We can't assume we can over-define that North Star. So getting the level of definition right about what our aiming point is to allow autonomy and creativity to flourish. I think another key aspect is deciding what to stop. We can't do this on the side of the desk.
100%.
We need to be much better at recognizing limitations that we have in terms of people's time for learning these new skills and learning how to make the best use of AI, and create the time for that and create the opportunity for that in a collaborative way. Unlike, probably not like ways we've approached before.
I actually want to just add a point to that, and I talk about the organisational layer cake, which is like where we just keep adding on top of one another as well, right? Because either through projects, through roles, we keep giving people more things to do. We don't take time to debrief properly, and so I think, like you said, you have to take something out or many things before you can add. That's a real piece of work in itself, right? And real discipline. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because I think we are going to have, or not think, we are going to add all the goodness in that we're talking about. We are going to have to remove what is no longer serving us. And there's many things, right? And that's a whole other conversation around what doesn't serve us anymore too, right? And maybe we need to think about that for a future conversation. But I agree with you. I think we are relearning our existence and crafting a different one as well too.
Yeah.
So if we have a look, one of the final questions, and then we will be able to see what else we want to go to here. So we know that if managers are going to still hang around in the mix and be a critical part of it, their future won't look the same anymore, right? Which will mean that the leaders that support them are also going to have to do different and learn probably different skill sets as well too to make that possible. And then the final question is, well, okay, for those that are remaining, let's say there will be some roles lost, there will be some roles added, there will be roles that will be redesigned, right? So you see a lot of different realities, right? But in those oversight roles, Neil, the question that we wanted to ask, well, will those oversight roles create more work for the people that are, left in the organisation to fulfil those roles where they are developing, engaging, responding, management risk? I think the risk management piece is critical in this too. What's your take on that? And I mean, I've got some context and nuances, everything, so I've got some points I want to make around it, but throwing over to you, what do you think? What is, what do we need to be thinking about?
I mean, even if we are saving, even if we are able to make roles redundant, we are still needing that time to do things we've just been talking about. That time to redesign roles, to co-design roles, to work out how organisations are structured. All those things are important strategic things to spend time on. But there are other dimension we haven't mentioned yet, which is around the tools themselves. So that assuming we're talking about generative AI, by its nature, it is generating and can be wrong, and the data can include bias if it's reflecting, human content. So these are all other things that progress over time that we need to monitor. Is the data as free from bias as possible? Are we being inclusive with our capabilities? Is it fair? Is it secure? All these other sort of guardrails around how we're using AI need to be monitored on a regular basis. The data's changing over time. The models are learning over time. These take constant effort. It's not a deliver and forget solution.
No.
It takes constant monitoring.
So can I ask you, what do you see could be some of the changes that we're going to see in terms of types of oversight roles that we're going to see in our organisation? So some of them you've mentioned around, bias, some of the ethical decisions as well too, compliance, data quality, how we're engaging with it. But what else do you think could be coming in the mix that maybe we're not thinking about at the moment that we need to be?
Yeah, I think if we are able to move to a much more sort of dynamic environment where people are empowered to learn in that kind of model, we still need to test whether these various initiatives that are popping up, the AI initiatives or the innovation, we still need to test whether they're coherent across the organisation.
Mm.
Is a change in HR affecting something else elsewhere in the organisation? So I think what we'll see is a much greater need at the management level, if you like, to join the dots across the organisation, to be much more sort of horizontal in their thinking around these solutions. What's the impact of this on somebody else?
Yes.
And then, of course, as we mentioned earlier, and of course, is this taking the organisation in the direction we want it to?
And so there's a couple of things on that, right? And that, with all the noise and complexity and changing, that's quite easy to get lost in the mix too, isn't it, right? So are we actually staying the course as well too? So that's the one thing to consider around that too. I think too, I've made a number of points here, and I know we're going to do some show notes for this, so I'm going to include those in there so that people can come back to them and think about it. And as I said, I think, there's a couple of points I just want to refer to, and there's just a number here, so I'm going to read off that for a second so I don't miss anything. But when I think about oversight roles, will they create even more work, for those remaining in the organisation? A couple of key points that I wanted to raise as well too. So I suppose the first thing we need to consider is the motive and intent of roles as well too, these oversight roles, right? So the motive and intent, why are we actually creating them? And you made a great point before that not only do we need to join dots across the organisation, we need to understand how they influence each other too, right? Like how they're going to impact one another as well too. So the next point I'd be thinking around oversight roles is, well, how are the roles designed and the scope of responsibilities, right? So what outcomes and impacts are we wanting to see? So if we're going to introduce oversight roles, how do they engage with already existing or emerging roles in the organisation, and what are they actually going to deliver? The other thing too is what support, right? What support will these oversight roles give, right? Like what value, in what way will they be helpful to those other roles, in those different parts of the business, and helping us transition through as well too. And the style and the manner and how these roles connect, Neil, is so critical. Yeah. And so I think it comes back to your point around, well, what does great look like for oversight roles? Yeah. What do, in terms of how they connect, the relationships, style and manner of delivery. So I'm going to put this in the notes so that people can come back and have a look at that, because I think we're at risk of maybe looking at it sometimes from that superficial level and not diving a little bit deeper into how they're actually going to connect with one another. And some of those questions can obviously help us de-risk the risk as well too, before we decide to jump in as well around that. So look, we always cover a lot within our conversations, don't we? Right? We're already like, hang on, we're going to keep it under half an hour. We've done well. We've got a few more minutes left around this. If you have to think about some of the key takeaways, and as I said, we have ongoing conversations, right? So, as I said, not the end of the beginning here. We'll continue it. But if you have to think about some of the key points from this conversation, what would you want people to think about? Like, what could they start to do if they were to go back and let me rephrase that. If you had to do one thing, if you go back and think about one thing that could start to make the difference as a leader, what would it be?
I think it would be open to, what would it be? I think we need to.
I didn't give you a warning.
No, that's fine. I think we need to open our minds to possibilities.
Yeah.
So we get comfort in the routine, in the day-to-day, in what is familiar and what we know, what our expertise is. All those things create comfort and a sense of control over what we do day-to-day. I think we need to step out of that space.
Yeah.
We need to be open to new ideas, to being challenged, to questioning why we do things.
Yeah.
And I think that will really open up conversations and discussions and opportunities for how we can use and apply AI in the workplace.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that comes off to mind if someone said to me, where would you start? Start building the capability and skill set within adversity intelligence.
Yeah.
Start creating spaces that allow people to be able to fight smart, to be durable, to test, have these discussions where we can actually trust one another, to talk about not only what works well, and that's important, but where were the mistakes, near misses, right? Yeah. So much value is in that, Neil. And it's always been a place where I've found the most, I suppose, impact in my own work and the most satisfaction, as have the clients. And so I would say, let's start looking at where we can, and you started it out beautifully at the beginning, flipping the script around what we always hold to be true, because it isn't, right? And we all need to be willing to say, what belief or myth do I need to leave behind as well too as I move forward.
Yeah, very interesting.
So Neil, is there any final points before we wrap it up? And people can obviously follow us, on LinkedIn, Ali Uren, UREN, Neil Harrison as well. You're there, I'm there. People can connect in. They'll obviously be able to find links to, the different things that we're working on and websites, and would encourage them to follow us and connect in as well too. Keep across what we're doing. So any final points before I sign off?
Let's carry on the conversation, Ali. I think this is important stuff, and very much as always enjoy talking to you. So let's carry on the conversations. Yeah.
You too, and look, thank you to everyone that comes in and gives us some of their headspace as well too. We always appreciate it and look forward to creating value in the not so obvious discussions as well too. So go well, everyone. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thanks.